Hey guys, Thomas Silly Jr. here, aka Mustached. I'm here to review the movie Hellfest. So this movie starts off, not so surprisingly, in a haunted house as three young women, are passing through, having a good time, uh, and one of them ends up on this dead end. They bump into this masked man, and the masked man proceeds to murder this woman and hangs her up as a prop. And the other bodies get dragged away as well. Again, placed as props. So we cut to our main character, Natalie, or Nate, and her pink haired friend, Taylor, who insist that they get these tickets from Nate's potential boyfriend, Gavin, who has tickets to Hellfest. These early access pass kind of tickets. And they, as they proceed outside, or either inside, I forgot where they met, but they meet Brooke as well, who joins them. So, Taylor also has a guy with her, and Brooke has her boyfriend as well. I don't know their boyfriend's name as well, but I do remember Gavin. I believe one of them was Hector? I don't know. Anyways, a party goes down, and as they make their way to Hellfest, and they insist on shots. But as that's going on, we see the movie cut to another guy mysteriously placing a mask on his head, and there will be several issues with this one decision later on, but I'll get to that at the end of this review. Anyways, the team of six decide to go for the scariest maze where the scarers can touch you once you have signed a waiver that they are allowed to do so. So, as I mentioned, the killer puts on a mask, and he also grabs a knife in the process. So, our team of six make it past these super scary clowns. Ooh. And they go into this paddle zone. It's a really weird zone. And they start to run through and get scared through these various different little scare zones. And while that's going on, they sort of get separated. The three women get separated from the guys, and the three women see a girl running from a killer, apparently, and she's trying to beg them for help. But the two of the girls move on ahead, and Natalie stays behind to see the killer actually make his way toward them. So Natalie insists that the killer, get on with stabbing the girl, and he does so, proceed to actually kill her, but she kind of just stares, like, for a pretty long time. I'm talking like 10 to 15 seconds of just staring at this guy do this, and then finally decides to just sort of wave it off and join the others as if that wasn't real. And she even sees afterwards, like, this other, like, scarer guy, like, poke a knife into a girl, but the knife, it's one of those fake knives that goes in. Like, you clearly see the knife go in itself, not into the woman, but into itself. It's a fake knife. So she kind of, again, just wavers off that first kill for whatever reason. Again, just already kind of a stupid move there. Anyways, they decide to separate Nate and Gavin, he's trying to get prizes for her, and he's like failing, and then they sort of go off on their own even further, and they take pictures together, and the killer, the actual one, is in the distance. So Nate decides to finally give in, kissing Gavin as they're taking pictures, and Brooke sees the killer take the pictures that they took and sort of walk off. So Brooke bumps her way back there and looks around. So she eventually gets her boyfriend to bring her back as they decide on which maze that they're going to. I believe they went to Deadlands Time or whatever it was called. But Gavin wants to get a toy for her for Nate on his own. So he's on his own. The rest of the team signed their waivers, and Gavin checks his phone and then checks the lockers to see several of these toys. It's assumed that Gavin might have worked there at some point. I'm not sure what the indication of him being in this area, looking at all these toys. I'm assuming he probably actually snuck back there and was just, I don't know what that was supposed to imply. But anyways, regardless of how he got back there and what he was doing, he gets stopped by the killer, and the killer attacks him with this hammer and smashes his face in, so he's the first of the 6 to die. And meanwhile, the main character, Nate, is texting her, but the killer has now his phone and is texting back to sort of indicate, oh, everything's fine, I'll meet you there, or whatever. So the others go on ahead. And the 2 other couples that are left are making out as they're on these little carts, and Kate's cart gets stuck behind, and she sees the masked man again, the killer, and the lights go out she sees the killer, and the killer is getting closer. So the other 4 have already gotten out, and we see that the killer and as Nate gets out on her own with the killer, all head out, and it would actually appear that several of these people are actually dressed like they have the same mask. So here's where a big issue comes in with me. So it was supposed to be like, oh, this fake killer, like, guy, they set up this whole thing where, like, the ride goes out, they scare this one, Nate, who got left behind, and then they see the several other killers, and probably among them is the real killer, I don't know. But here's where the big issue comes in, and I'll talk about this now. So that we saw the killer take on this mask at the beginning. So there's sort of several implications, but I don't know if the movie knew which implication it even wanted to go for. Either he had to have worked there, in which case, how would he have obtained the mask? Would he have are they allowed to take their mask home when they're done working? I don't know. I assume he would have to have worked there in order to get this mask. I assume that this mask in question is, only a part of Hellfest. I assume. Maybe you can pick it up anywhere? I don't know. There's no indication of any of this anywhere. So how the killer got that specific mask is Again, something that the movie never explains. Nonetheless, uh, so that fake out happened, and then it's kind of implied that the killer can be any of them. Ooh. And in the process, Taylor is grabbed away from the group, like, and these either younger children or smaller people, I'm not sure which, end up guiding them. Uh, so the team of five now see that there are three possible like maze things. Excuse me. And the three women decide to go through the baby one, and the two guys that are left decide to go for the most intense one. So the three girls are having fun, finally, all three of them, running from this, very obvious, like, oh, I'm chasing you, like, fake guy. But meanwhile, we cut to what I assume is the real killer, kind of like on the outside, sort of dragging along, watching them. And they're the people are getting the girls are getting freaked out along the way. In the process, the killer picks up a needle to set up a potential future kill. Nonetheless, they head back out. But Nate kind of is set behind and sees the masked man and assumes that that one's the killer. Meanwhile, the two guys had seen a chain slowly start to move behind them, and then they run along. So one of the guys, Taylor's boyfriend, gets left behind. I don't know how he got separated from the other guy, but whatever, anyway. He bumps into the real killer, and the real killer attacks him with that said needle and kills him by poking him through the eye with said needle. So the rest of the team head out, now remaining the four of them. And Nate gets puked on by this, like, green monster, and then Brooke joins her in the restroom, and then shortly exits. And then the killer appears as she's, like, drying her hair, and then is just standing there, menacingly, and then vanishes. So she goes to use the restroom, and then she's, like, texting to Gavin, and she hears the update ping in the restroom with her. So she doesn't know what to think of it at first, and then sends another update, and then gets another ping in front of the door, seeing the shoes of the killer. So she's grabbed by the killer as she runs into one of the other stalls and ends up running outside to Brooke, and then she's, like, faking out, and eventually gets a security guard to talk to. He says that they really can't do anything, although he does mention that apparently the scarers aren't allowed to scare anyone in the restroom. That's apparently off limits, I guess. But again, since there was no one there at that point, he really couldn't do anything. So, they rejoin up, and they see that Taylor, again, had left them now at this point. And we see on the stage Tony Todd, who is playing a circus clown. For those of you who don't know who Tony Todd is, he uh, has been in, I think, a few scary movies. I want to say Candyman is probably one of his earliest ones that he's known for. Anyway, so this executioner guy gets ready to drop an axe on Taylor's head, and Nate thinks it's real. What is happening is real, so she heads up, and the security team stops them as a clearly fake head rolls off, and Taylor head pulls back as the that part of the stage moves back into the backstage, and the executioner, now that they are alone, takes off a mask to reveal that he has the other mask on, the quote-unquote killer mask, and does drop the guillotine on her once, and he's like setting up to like do it again, and she moves out. She's screaming out for help, and the killer slowly makes his way up to her, catching up, and then the killer stabs her and Brooke's boyfriend out in the open, and everyone's freaking out. Everyone's running away. So while that's going on, the guards, seeing another like masked man, one of the ones that has the same mask, so they attack that one, assuming that that one's the killer. They take off the mask, and he's like, "What happened?" While the real killer is actually heading towards Nate and Brooke, who are the only two left at this point. So, the killer grabs an axe, and the two of them head into a haunted house, because that is apparently the only way they can leave. And they're getting freaked out along the way as Nate starts to pick up that there are green lasers close to the ground that open up these scares to even come out. So Nate is trying to calm down Brooke, and the two of them get actual real weapons, and the killer is behind these two not dolls, but the taller standing statues. I forget what their names are. Mannequins. That's what it is. Sorry. Anyway, Nate realizes it just in time, and he nicks Brooke on the leg, and she has to carry her. So the killer, who we're following more intently, is heading into this room with these white masks, and everything else in the room is pitch black. So Nate hid within one of the masks, and then the killer kind of almost left, and then went back, and then looks at one of the masks, and then Nate attacks. She leaves with Brooke. But unfortunately, Brooke sort of leaves as Nate gets attacked, and so Nate gets pulled behind, and then Brooke gets chased by the killer. So we almost assume that Nate was in trouble or whatever, but she manages to come up from behind after he changes his target to Brooke, and he hits him again, and then they both flee, and that's when the cops arrive. But as the cops look around, all that is left is a blood spatter. There is no body. So the cops again go on ahead and not saying anything. And we hear on the news or on the radio or whatever that there was a killing that did actually happen years ago. So Taylor's story actually had actual merit to it. And as I mentioned before, we see that the killer goes back to his home and has several other masks from other, like, areas like this before. And we see him turn to the left to see this younger character, and all she does is call out "Daddy," and he pulls out this stuffed doll for her, and that is how the movie ends. So I definitely did notice quite a few issues. Again, how he obtained that mask. How did he even get in? Again, with the mask as well. Stuff like that kind of goes unanswered. How the six of them, whenever they're in a haunted house, it's just the six of them and no one else. Again, so another reviewer pointed that out, and I was like, huh, that is kind of true. That is very weird. Although I do think that they at least attempted to fix that slightly by having the killer come outside and then having the freak out. I don't know, but it is still a bit weird that, that the area wouldn't be more filling inside. I think they could have fixed that by just having a quick, exposition about, oh, if you're a part of a set group, then only that set group gets to go in, and then another set group gets to go in afterward, or something along those lines. Could have fixed that one problem. I think, again, a short sentence could have fixed that, but regardless. The characters are pretty generic. And they are more designed to be characters that you just don't really care about too much. I mean, Nate, or just as I referred to her throughout the movie, Nate does kind of get the very typical, slasher, trope. She becomes the character that you kind of, root on for a little bit more. Because she's the character that starts to learn. She's the character that she's noticing the little things, she takes the notes that her potential boyfriend gave her, and then listened to that and executed on that. She's the one who noticed the little green lasers. She started picked up on this stuff. It was able to, in the process, by learning this said stuff, was able to help at least one of her friends survive as well, that being Brooke. So, I think this movie is okay. I think I'll probably either give it a 5 or a 6 out of 10. Again, just a few more little lines of figuring out how this area works and the rules of it, I think would have helped. I think give an indication of how the guy even got the mask. I hope they either, because it seems like there was this heavy indication that there's either going to be a prequel and or a sequel or both, that they delve into how he could have obtained said mask. Anyways, yeah, it's not that bad, but again, I think a little bit more could have helped. Again, building on the characters as well. Another factor that could have easily helped this movie been a bit better, a bit stronger. The actual killings themselves, pretty simplistic, all things considered. Stuff of that nature. Anyways, that's my review of Hellfest, and if you enjoyed it, then please feel free to comment, and subscribe. Also, make sure to check out the link in the description. I'll head you over to my Patreon page. Any donations are greatly appreciated. And until next time, everyone, bye-bye.